First of all, Mr. Dorn, it is an honor to talk to you. I'm a huge fan of your work. Funny enough, I actually got into, believe it or not, I actually got into Star Trek in this pandemic. My
Oh,
dad
really?
is always, yeah, my dad has always been a fan. I remember watching you and the Next Generation growing up, and then I left it for a while. And then there was an episode that my buddy, he's a huge Star Trek fan, had me watch from Deep Space Nine called Far Beyond the Stars,
Right.
and it blew me away. And I immediately was hooked back into it. So thank you for that. I mean, amazing job. But this film is incredible. I'm a big sci-fi fan, and Derek Ting's Agent. The original was in 2017. Now this is kind of a follow-up, Agent of Revelation. Can you talk to me about your character, Alistair, and what intrigued you about the role?
Um, it was written. I mean, it's well written, first of all. But what it is that the character has quite a lot of depth, and it gave me an opportunity to do something interesting with the part, which is what I love to do with any part. I mean, whenever I see an actor that I'm a fan of, is they're usually very interesting actors. They do something interesting with the part, and so even though it may not have been overt, there is a subtlety about his about where he's coming from. You know, like he's carrying a lot of guilt, and even though he has all the money in the world and he can do whatever he wants to, it can't erase that guilt.
I
And
love, yeah, absolutely.
yeah, there's a bit of melancholy about him, you know, that isn't really, like I said, it's not overt. Like he's not, you know, crying in his beer in a scene or something like that. But whenever I do the scene, I keep that in the back of my mind to add to the whatever we're doing.
Now, I love the chemistry with you and Derek, and I know Derek wrote, directed, and is a co-star in this film, or the lead in this film. Can you talk to me about the collaboration process and working with him, and how that kind of helps inform your character with a writer director on set with you and able to work out those scenes with you?
Interestingly enough, there was only one instance where we actually had a discussion about something that was sort of, I wanted to do something one way and he wanted to do something another way. And you know, I've directed before and I've been an actor for all this time, so I understand how I can see a director and know exactly kind of where they're coming from in terms of, if they know the script and they know what they want, they have an answer for you right away. If they don't, if they're just, you know, treading water, they'll look and they'll sing and they'll look around and they'll look at the script and they don't really have an answer.
Sure.
Where he had an answer, and it was Alistair's death scene, and I wanted to do it a certain way, nothing out of the order, nothing, you know, way out there, but just a different way. And I said, and he goes, no, I really want it to be like this, you know. And I go, really? Well, you know, and we kind of went back and forth, very friendly, nothing
Right.
bad at all, but just, well, I don't know, you know. And finally, you know, I mean, you know, if they're not, if what he's suggesting is not, you know, too crazy, you know, I don't mind doing it. So I said, okay, you know, I'll do it. I
Now,
mean, I still would have loved to have done my um, death scene, but you know, I think it worked. I think, you know, what he did was fine.
now, you talk so much about the character, the character's kind of backstory and what intrigued you about the character. But what did you want to bring to the page of Alistair that may have not, or sorry, what did you want to bring to the character of Alistair that may have not necessarily been on the page?
Well, that whole the whole melancholy, because
Sure.
it really wasn't on the page. It was what was on the page was that he did something that he really regretted. I mean, and so he had to spend all this money to try to obfuscate. Is that the right word? Or negate, or whatever.
Okay.
Anyway,
Yes.
yeah, all of this stuff that he did, or the decision he made, and so that was on the page. What wasn't on the page, like I said, was the idea that he realized that nothing he can do is going to negate that decision. He's going to have to live with that. And that is a very difficult thing to do. That's an extremely difficult thing to do.
Well, I love this is another reason why I thought the film was so intriguing because it's interesting. As soon as we get introduced to your character, you can tell there's a weight almost on him that needs to come out. Eventually, we get it towards the end of the film, and I agree with that completely with what you said. But can you talk to me about how your character views the character of Jim and kind of their relationship?
Well, he's I like to think of Alistair as kind of a user, you know, and everybody in his circle or is really a pawn. And although he can have relationships and he can be very, nice or, very supportive and all that type of stuff, he still sees people as pawns.
Absolutely.
And I think that is something he can't help. I mean, that's how he built his world. And I think their relationship is one of, okay, like when he's teaching him how to do the Tai Chi and all that. I mean, it really is, okay, this is what you do. I'm giving you this information. This is what you do so you can go fight for me. And so I think that's why his character is really complex. We don't see a lot of the complexity on the screen. We don't see that. But what you're seeing is the backstory that I kind of created for him.
Absolutely. Now, you've done so much in the genre of sci-fi, and fair to say that you've been around the genre a lot. What stood out to you the most about Agent Revelation that told this story for a larger audience? Because sometimes we get these cautionary tales that sci-fi thrillers can be. What did this film mean to you?
At first, it was a really good role. That was the first thing. As I read the script and I go, I don't care about anything else. First of all, I just want to see what my role is,
Right.
And then I usually read a script like 3 times within a couple of days before I say yes or no. And so the second time I read it as a whole piece. Like, what is this script?
Right.
Do I enjoy it? And then the third time I read it, it was about, what can I bring something to this? Is there something interesting that I'm not seeing on the first 2 reads that I can bring to it? And I think that as with sci-fi, and if you're a sci-fi fan, I mean, I'm from the old black and white days.
We're talking Lost in Space?
Huh?
Lost in Space and Twilight Zone?
Oh, I remember when they went color. Are you kidding? But even before then, because just an aside, I don't know if you've ever seen the original Godzilla.
Oh, yeah.
Without Perry Mason.
Yep.
Okay. All Japanese crew. And it was a very good movie.
Absolutely.
In terms of the message. And that's the great thing about science fiction is that, growing up science fiction, not so much these days. Science fiction is these days is really, really about CGI and special effects and I mean, the characters come running at you from all angles, and you don't know. I mean, I was watching a movie in the theater when the theaters were open, and they had the trailer for some Marvel Universe movie, and all of a sudden there were 30 people running at me.
Oh, wow.
All superheroes, and I'm looking, going, who are these people? Who's that? I've never seen that, and they're just, and so but in the old days, they didn't have a budget.
Sure.
So they had to tell stories. And science fiction has always been about storytelling, but mostly about the human condition, where
Absolutely.
we're going, where are we going to be in 20 years, in 50 years, in 200 years? And who are we going to be? And also about the stuff that goes on in our lives. You know, like if this was the 50s or 60s, we would have a sci-fi movie about the pandemic,
Yeah.
you know, about racism, about all the things that, about the presidency, about elections. They would tackle those issues where nobody tackles at those days.
Sure.
And so the movie spoke to me a little bit about, not so much about our time, but the human condition. You know?
Absolutely.
And I like that part of it. I mean, on a certain level, I think maybe that's why a lot of people like the movie, and they enjoy it because it does speak to the human condition.
Right. And the characters feel so grounded in the situations. Yes, even in sci-fi, like you said, feel like it's telling a human story. That's something that's something that Star Trek has done in the 60s. That's something that Twilight Zone did back then as well, that I fell in love with. Twilight Zone is my favorite show. But switching gears, I want to talk about Star Trek for a second because look, you're iconic. Let's be honest, you're a legend.
Thank you.
Like you're a big part of my childhood. I watched you with my dad in Star Trek Next Generation. But I look, I'm a huge Gargoyles fan, and I love Taurus. So I'm a huge fan of your work just in general, and also some of the DC animated stuff that you've done, and also in Arrow. But back to Star Trek. Do you have any? What are the chances we get to see Worf pop up in Picard, or even Lower Decks?
I mean, the totally honest answer is I have not been contacted about being on the show. And this is the second season. So I think that that the odds are not very good. But in science fiction, you never say never. You never know.
And I'm keeping my fingers crossed for your return. At Lower Decks, especially, I think you'd be so much fun in that show.
Yeah.
Now, another highly anticipated project you're involved with is Invincible. I'm a huge Robert Kirkman fan, and I know that you're voicing Battle Beast. Is that correct?
Yes.
How's that coming along? How's that project coming along?
That was a long time ago.
Really?
Yeah.
The project's still in post. Do you know when we'll get any updates on it?
Not at all. Not at all. I mean, and that's the thing about these voiceover jobs, especially when it comes to these video games or TV shows or whatever the case. TV shows are different. They're pretty much like they have to be, aired like, within a few weeks. But you're talking about years for these things to go. I mean, people have said Invincible, and I go, I don't know what you're talking about because, it's like in post, and I went, I can't remember when I did it. I really can't. So.
Well, that was fascinating because I honestly thought that maybe during the pandemic, obviously, so I've been watching a lot of commercials lately, and it seems like they're getting around it with a lot of animated stuff. So I just figured that, it's something that most people can do essentially from home if you have all the equipment.
Yes. It's a little problematic for them because, they have all the right equipment.
Right.
And I've been doing a lot from home, and it's sort of like I don't have the right equipment. I just have a microphone and in this room, and that's it. So it is problematic for them, even though they're getting around it. It's I'm sorry, but there was one show I did. Was it Fallout? It may have been Fallout Las Vegas or something like that, and they called me to say, "Oh, Michael, we really want you to do this the follow up to it." And I go, "What are you talking about? Who?" Well, you did Fallout. I said, that was like 4 years ago, I mean, it's so long to get it on the air. So that's why, I don't want to say, oh yeah, Invincible, it was great. I don't remember.
Fair answer. Hey, listen, I completely understand. That's a fair answer. Now, last question I have for you, because look, I'm going through Star Trek now chronologically. I started in the pandemic. I finished Enterprise, currently on Discovery, and then currently on the original series, and then I get to Discovery. So Do you feel that you are? Is there more story to tell for you with the character of Worf?
Oh God, yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, and I've been telling this story for 12 years. No, I mean, not 12 years, since 2012, which is I wrote a script um, 10 years ago, and I was, it's about Worf. It's a Worf spinoff, and I've been trying to get it done. And there's at first a lot of interest, then a little interest, then a lot of interest, and it just goes like this all the time. So yeah, there's actually a great story, a really great story, which isn't necessarily about Worf being, people want to say, oh, Worf, he is the, this is really how Worf has always been, which is he's the guy that kind of, doesn't say much. He doesn't have any fear, but he has learned, and he is constantly learning, and he's soaking up information and things like a sponge. And he's trying to save the Klingon Empire from going the way of the dodo, where they have two choices. They can either run with the times, or they can go out in a blaze of glory. And he's always been of the mind that warriors, as he always calls himself, adapt and survive, and that's what they're supposed to do. And so and it's an interesting story. Usually, when you say, "Oh, it's going to be about Klingons," it's Starfleet and looking at Klingons.
Sure.
And we always kind of scratch the surface with the Klingons, except for Deep Space Nine. They really went into it. But this is different. We are on the Klingon Empire, and we're allowing smatterings of Starfleet officers in the Klingon Empire, and what that means, to the Empire. And it's very, and when I was writing it, and I'm a big Star Trek fan from the original too, is that we always think of the Klingon Empire as one world,
right?
Just a home world. But the Klingon Empire is just like Starfleet. It has 150, 120 planets, worlds, systems that they control. And they're running out of resources, and they're running out of people, because it's sort of like the Russians, where they have all of these places, or the Romans, they have all of these conquests that they have to take care of. And it's draining. And his argument is like, do you want to be like the Russians? Do you want to be like the Romans? What we have to do is we have to go out to these places and make friends with them, give them their independence if they want it. If they don't want independence and they want to be under it, fine, but they have to be in line, so we don't have to have a whole squad of people out there watching them. And Worf comes up with this big idea, and they say, well, since it's your idea, you're the one that has to go out to each one of these worlds. And so every week he's going out to not make contact, but to bring these worlds back into a peaceful Klingon Empire. And on the other hand, they've allowed Starfleet officers into the Klingon Empire now. And that causes a lot of friction.
I love that.
And actually, I have a Marina is like is my best friend. And I said, I have a role for you. And she goes, what is it? I said, well, the Starfleet officers and the Klingons don't get along. And there's always problems. There's fights, there's issues. And they said, well, we got to do something about this. And I said, you need a psychologist. And she comes in, and everybody comes to her with their problems. I don't like that guy. He's, so anyway, that's my pitch.
Michael, greenlit. Let's make this happen. Greenlit right now.
Greenlit, I know. Hey, the funny thing is, you would think that they would go, oh my God, yeah, let's do it. We got all this other stuff.
I mean, look, I completely agree with you, and that's something else that look, over the last few years we've had a resurgence in Star Trek,
Oh
starting
my
with
God.
Discovery, Lower Decks. There's Strange New Worlds coming out. There's so much Star Trek content, and this is a great idea because this is the side of Star Trek that we haven't seen. We haven't seen the non-Federation side, a show based around that. How amazing would that be? Like that, you got like I literally goosebumps.
Oh,
You know what
goosebumps.
I'm saying? Like that's
And you know,
incredible.
and it still is the Federation because they're in there. You know, they're still part of it. I mean, there's in them in my story, they are. There's a smattering of it. There's a whole bunch of people. It's not about them, but they're there. So people, if they love the Federation, they'll have the Federation in there. So one day, from your mouth to God's ears.
Hopefully, look, we have a Picard series now. This Worf series, here we go. Greenlit CBS All Access. I'd love to see it.
Yeah.
But Michael, look, you've been so gracious with your time. I
No
truly
problem.
appreciate it, and thank you so much. I'd love to talk to you about anything ever again. Any project you have.
Okay.
I've had a great time chatting with you.
Well, we will. I'm writing right now. In fact, I finished. I'm a big Western guy. I love
Oh,
Western.
me too.
Yeah.
Tombstone's one of my favorite movies of all time.
Tombstone, but Unforgiven.
Oh, classic.
I thought I was done with Westerns, but that was it was wonderful.
Oh, it's
And
amazing.
so, and like I said, once again, from the 50s and the 60s when they were doing some really great stuff. So my manager wanted me to think about that. And so I said, look, I've got an idea. So I wrote a Western movie. So I'm done with it. At the beginning of the year, we're going to start pitching it.
Michael, this has been such a pleasure. Thank you so much.
My pleasure, man.
You're amazing. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, man. All right.
Pleasure meeting you.
Bye-bye now.
Take care.